Hi, this is James George again. You know, everybody's saying things are turning around, things are going good. You know, I heard one of these guys on one of these business stations, you know, CNBC, something like that, talking. He said, you know, if I pumped $1 trillion into the economy, a dead horse would get up and run around the track. We dumped in $5 trillion. You know, Nancy Pelosi, when she saw that housing was going down, she ran out there in 2006 when she got the speaker's gavel, and she increased the federal budget from $2.4 trillion to $3.7 trillion. Look it up. The woman went out and spent $500 billion on SIU workers for the disabled. She went out there and spent $400 trillion, I think it was for TSA or Homeland Security. You know, we had a problem with murder rates, and this is due to single parenthood. And so their solution is we're going to spend hundreds of billions of dollars in criminal activity with policing. And then the final one, which really blows me away, is to create more workers that we can sell houses to. We'll go ahead and give catering to the schools $232 billion, and yet we're going to talk about obesity. I'm sitting here going, we got an obesity problem, and you're feeding them at breakfast, you're feeding them at lunch, you're babysitting them after school, you're feeding them snacks. I mean, what's going on here? When I grew up, we walked to school. My mom gave me a sack lunch, and there was 4 times as many of us. You guys are all living in fear because you guys don't want to do what's moral. If you were moral, maybe you'd be virgins when you got married. But you're not moral anymore. You're a bunch of women run loose with a credit card and have used and abused the law to enable yourself. What we have is a monster on our hands, and what Nancy Pelosi did was enable. And one of the biggest things she did there was she went ahead and told these people that she gave these jobs to. See, take a look at it. We take the money from infrastructure away, we put it on unemployment. We go ahead and increase the federal budget and hire all these people to work for the government, and then we send them down to Acorn to apply for a job. We send them over to HUD for a down payment, and then we tell the banks, if you want us to insure you, you better give them a loan. And it looks like they're going after the small banks because the Community Reinvestment Access, if you're within 5 miles of a community bank, you can force them to do this. So they played all these little games, and you know, while George Bush was in, I think he added $549 billion to the deficit, and Nancy Pelosi increased the budget by 1.3 or 4 trillion the last 2 years she was in his administration. Now they've added another $4 trillion to the debt, and maybe more by the time this is all over with, and yet the GDP growth has only been from 14 to 15 something trillion. Why don't you look back and see what GDP was during the George Bush administration? I think he was somewhere around 9 and ended at somewhere around 13, 14. So it kind of looks just back asswards. Here we invest 20%, we get a GDP growth of $5 trillion. Here we invest $5 trillion, we get a GDP growth of only 1/20th of what we invested. Again, go ahead and claim it's all George Bush's fault. What it is Nancy Pelosi was handed $878 or $787 billion to invest in infrastructure and didn't invest it there. That's the truth. Had she invested it there, think about it. Let's just use our reason, understanding, and had you increased the budget, you would have had 5 times as many construction workers working on your infrastructure, creating 7 times that many more guys working in mining your natural resources, And one of the things that really picks my bone about back then is 2008, they let the forest burn down. They didn't even mind their natural resources. They let it pollute. Over here in Colorado and Nevada and Utah or something, they got this bug beetle that's eating away the pine trees. Back when I was a kid, they managed our forests. They went ahead and strip cut so it wouldn't burn it all down. They managed our natural resource. We don't have management going on anymore. We got a bunch of business administration, sociology people who don't know what they're doing. Welfare to work girls running our government. They are brainless. And I mean it in a good way. You saw George Bailey go to the girl when she says, "What about going in?" And he says, "Hey, brainless, haven't you seen the Explorer magazine? Don't you know about coconut? Watch It's a Wonderful World." I'm telling you, girls, you're brainless. You ought to let people do what they're supposed to do. You ought to go ahead and say, "Hey, if you got a better idea, lead the way." That's what I did in the baby boom. That's what I did in my generation. We went ahead and let those that were most capable lead the way. And I'll tell you something. There was 4 of us standing right behind each one of them saying, "You don't get it right, we're going to take over." Now girls, don't let me get Sam Kinison on you, but you better start using your heads. This is James George. Thank you.